The High School of Glasgow, a trilogy. Our school can trace its origins back to over 800 years ago. 1124 is the date we give. We were established with a higher purpose. We started out as the Sang School for Glasgow Cathedral, which was dedicated in the presence of King David I in 1136. This makes us the oldest continuous school in Scotland. Music remains an important part of our community, and we still help young people find their voice and give vent to it. As the cathedral began to lay down the foundations for a university, the choir boys, who were alternately known as grammar school scholars, had to be found a new home. In 1460, buildings and lands were gifted to the school in what became known as Grammar School Wynd. By 1601, wind and rot, along with a century of roughshod feet, had run down the school building. It was replaced and enlarged, and the school was now referred to as the Town School. Only 55 years later, in 1656, the council decided to demolish and rebuild. What did those 17th century schoolboys get up to? The foundations for the new school in George Street were laid in 1787. The rector's salary was £100 per annum, other masters' salaries were £25, and fees were 5 shillings per quarter. Whereas our history stretches back 8 centuries, our name is barely 200 years old. The grammar school was renamed the High School of Glasgow in 1834. 44 years later, in 1878, the school was on the move again, this time to Elmbank Street. Between 1894 and 1919, so much happened. The founding of the Glasgow High School for Girls in 1894, the first school magazine produced by the Literary Society in 1896, costing all of 1 penny, and former pupil Sir Henry Campbell Bannerman becoming Prime Minister in 1906. 16 years later, another former pupil, Andrew Bonar Law, would also become Prime Minister. 1914 saw the outbreak of the First World War, and too many of a generation fell. Of the 2,000 former pupils who served, 478 lost their lives. This was also an era of motto modulation. 1900's Virtus Sola Nobilitas changed to Haec Summa Est in 1912. This lasted 7 years until 1919, when the Lord Lion granted the school its arms with the motto Sursum Semper. Being a school in which Latin is part of the curriculum, we all understand these changes, don't we? Well, for those who may have forgotten what once they knew, virtue is the only nobility changed to this is the sum, ending up with Sursum Semper, always higher. Over the next 100 years, a number of key events propelled us into the modern progressive school rooted in tradition that we now are. In 1919, ground was acquired by the Glasgow High School Club at Old Annisland, providing playing fields for both club and school. This proved to be a canny move, and 8 years later, in 1927, more land was acquired and the Memorial Pavilion was erected. Some 50 years later, these grounds would become pivotal to the continued existence of the school. During World War II, around 150 former pupils lost their lives. The school continues to remember the fallen in both world wars, with expeditions going out biannually to Belgium and France to visit the war graves of former pupils. Whilst World War raged all about, a small local battle was fought in 1943 when Glasgow Corporation bid to acquire part of the playing fields at Annisland. The school contested it and won the day. In 1973, the Glasgow High School Club secured arrangements to merge with Drew Stainton School in Bearsden to ensure the high school and its traditions. On 30th June 1976, the Corporation of Glasgow finally closed the doors at Elmbank Street. The day after, 1st July, the new independent co-educational High School of Glasgow came into being, following the merger between the Glasgow High School Club and Drew Stainton School. The next year, 1977, the senior school building opened at Old Annisland. Being established with a higher purpose is probably the reason why 40 years ago, when the government of the day decided to disband selective grammar schools, Former pupils and friends of the school, as well as over 500 well-wishers, raised £635,000, equivalent to £4 million in today's money. Having failed to persuade the government to assist, we did it ourselves. And here we are today, still moving with the times, but having found a good place to prosper and strive, ever higher, in our academic and social goals, with people, excellence, community and a warm welcome at our heart. The High School of Glasgow is unique in Scottish education, as the school saved and reborn by the vision and dedication of its former pupils and friends. The people whose praises we could sing for keeping our spirit and vision alive are too many to number. Indeed, that number includes each and every one of us, and all of those in whose footsteps we follow.